In any police investigation, you have victims, suspects, evidence, and then there's what happens in the interrogation room, the box. In there is a masterful game of cat and mouse, where the goal is supposed to be the truth. Now, you may have seen interrogations play out in some TV cop show, but you've probably never seen the real deal until now.
I always wanted to be a police officer. From the streets, work in the big city.
Houston homicide detective Sergeant Brian Harris knows the streets.
There'll be another entrance on the back side.
He knows how to fire a pistol, and he knows how to work a crime scene.
Does Eric have a friend named Umberto?
But his real talent comes out here in the interrogation room, or as the cops call it, the box.
This is the box.
What does this place mean to you?
This is the place where it all happens. It can save a lot of families a lot of heartache. It makes sense out of all the nonsense of craziness of some of the deaths that we deal with.
Harris is the Grand Inquisitor of Houston homicide. He teaches his technique at the HPD Academy and to other departments around the country.
How important is what happens in the box?
In a courtroom, when a jury sees videotape or a written confession, it's the most damaging, I think, kind of evidence that there is.
The police interrogation has been a staple of TV cop shows for generations.
Is that what you tell yourself so you can sleep at night?
But while the belligerent, in-your-face style might work in Hollywood,
Tell me the truth!
Yelling at them, smacking them, making them feel like a piece of dirt. At least here in Houston, Texas, it's not going to work.
Harris is known for a decidedly different technique.
Say whatever you can to keep them in that chair.
What do you think it is about you that makes you effective?
I treat them with dignity.
And even when you wanted a divorce, you still took care of her. Not many men would do that, Jim.
If they can see me as a person that views them with dignity, the chances of communication are starting to open up.
Primetime has been granted unprecedented access to explore how Harris plies his trade by examining 3 murder investigations which highlight his skill. Case number 1, August 16, 2002. Police are called to check on 73-year-old Hattie Faye McCann. Neighbors say newspapers have been piling up on her doorstep.
I walked in the house with HPD, and that's when we found my aunt laying face down on the couch and realized she was gone.
An autopsy revealed murder.
This is one of my favorite pictures.
Her sister LaVon and niece Carol immediately suspected her estranged husband, James McCann.
You could pick up on vibes that he wanted to get rid of my sister, just looked mean and hateful at her. Just daggers had come out of his eyes at her.
Harris invites McCann down to the station.
I'm Brian Harris.
I needed to speak to Jim McCann because at this point in the investigation, I had very little physical evidence.
Case number 2, August 9th, 2006. Police are called to a local park and discover the body of 15-year-old Jose Lorenzo.
He was a beautiful and handsome boy. He was, and he is, my angel.
Jose's cell phone records indicate that just before the murder, he had received numerous phone calls from a friend, 15-year-old Frank Spencer, who's brought in as the prime suspect. Police think the murder is gang-related.
Frank is part of a gang, and the gang asked Frank to help kill his friend.
Case number 3, July 18th, 2003. 4 young people are shot dead in the tranquil suburb of Clear Lake. After years of dead ends, police receive an anonymous tip leading them to this woman, Christine Paolilla, a close friend of the female victims, Rachel Colorutis and Tiffany Rowell.
Somebody who some would say looks very innocent. How could this young girl, do such an evil act?
Paolilla has fallen a long way since being voted Miss Irresistible by her high school classmates.
When she's in the interview room here, very manipulative girl, manipulative liar.
Before an interview begins, Harris makes sure the box is set up in a way that gives him a psychological edge. The walls are kept blank.
When people are under a lot of anxiety, their mind can wander and focus on posters or pictures instead of focusing on you.
The suspect's chair on straight legs, while the interrogator's is on rollers.
Because I may start off being 3 to 4 feet away, but they're right about to confess. I may be within inches of them.
And usually, just as he enters the room,
Snickers bar? Food is huge.
Harris likes to run a little experiment.
If they have food in front of them, you don't want any of your food anymore, and they don't eat, or they're having a hard time eating, that tells me I might have a shot at this person. They have a conscience, they have a soul. Because how many of us, when we've been so upset, try to eat a meal? We'll come back.
Christine Paolilla, for one, didn't even touch her drink.
Take some water. And I'm keenly aware that she's not touching the water. So perhaps her stomach's in that knot. Perhaps there is a soul inside there and she's going to confess.
Notice there are no lawyers in the room. That's because Harris has either talked his suspects into sitting down voluntarily,
We told you before you were not under arrest, okay?
or talked them out of invoking those all-important Miranda rights.
I'm going to read you what's called your legal warning. Texas is Miranda on steroids. We go overboard with our statutory warnings.
So how do you talk around that issue without giving them a good idea of asking for a lawyer?
I'll say, you know, Chris, I want to talk to you and I want to share some things with you. But in order for me to do that, I have to read what's called your legal warning. Do you understand me? You have to waive. That means give up your rights so I can hear what's going on. What happened? Do you understand?
A little manipulative, though. I want to hear your side of the story, but for me to hear your side, you have to waive this. It's a little manipulative.
That's the truth.
Curiously, Harris says guilty subjects are actually more likely to waive their rights than the innocent.
Did you see that dude, man? That sucker went down, man. The people who end up talking to us are more curious to find out what we know, and that's why they waive their rights. I'm just a cop. They think they're smarter than me.
And perhaps they are.
He's an extremely cunning man. He's very manipulative.
The interrogations have begun for James McCann, Frank Spencer, and Christine Paolilla. Now, the game is on.
A cat and mouse game, a true cat and mouse game.